Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about the top 1%. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what is it that the top 1% of software engineers do that sets them apart from other engineers? They have a genuine interest for their craft, and they are they are always experimenting and trying to learn how to do things and how to improve their knowledge of their craft. That's what they do. So the best of the best that I work with, they usually show themselves very quickly in the interviewing process, and then you can see you sort of I've gotten to the point now where I feel like I can basically gauge your overall seniority level in an area very quickly by just talking for a few minutes, because as I've said before in other videos, if you ask a mediocre software developer and a superstar software developer the same open question where they have to sort of show their values or the way that they've usually addressed certain problems, the level of the depth of the answer will differ enormously. As an example says, like, what do you find to be most challenging with software development? Like, that's just an example question, but if it's a junior or a mid-level or someone like that, their thoughts on this topic will be very limited. But if you have someone who really knows the subject, has a lot of creativity and like a lot of usually talent, and have done quite a bit of reflection related to this topic, they will be able to go on about this topic, talk really in depth with it, and they're usually hungry to share their ideas with someone else and sort of get some rubber ducking going with someone who seems to share the same sort of flair or passion and so forth. It's usually, I find, a treat to listen or take part in a conversation with the top software engineers, because they really are dedicated and like they really do care about what they do. To me, it's sort of, I see that in most people in society, which like the people that are extraordinary, not just famous people, but I'm talking just extraordinary at what they do. It can be for all it can be a social worker or someone who works in like as a volunteer or something like that. The people who truly care and really do make an effort in whatever they're doing, they usually, and I think that this is the same thing for people who are creative and so forth. Some people are, I'm not saying it's you're born with it or something like that, but the people who really are the top at whatever it might be, they usually really care about that subject deeply. And it's not just something they do because it's a job. It's not something that they just do because it's sort of nice. It's something that they continuously try to experiment with and improve in, because it's almost like an inherent thing. It's something I can't really put into words when I talk to people. I mean, I feel the same way. I can't tell you why the master, for example, like I can't tell you why when I started doing, say, CSS, everybody told me it was shit and like it was horrible and so forth, and I'm sure it is, but I can't tell you what motivated me to say, yeah, I know, but I'm still gonna fucking learn it and I'm gonna get really good at it. I can't tell you why, setting up why it's important to me that a team has an efficient work process so that we ship in a consistent and well working, like a streamlined fashion. So why I did spend so much time trying to figure out how to do that effectively, or how to write good tests, or how to do A, B, and C. And I can't tell you why there are some people in the open source world, for example, who spend tons and tons and tons of time on maintaining some of like these. Like, it's insane to me that so much of the main tools around the world for us software developers are maintained by just really passionate people who contribute their spare time towards that goal. It's similar to, as I said before, like you might have people who work all day in a shit job and then they still have the energy afterwards to go and help out in a soup kitchen or do something else with their time, like because they get fulfillment from doing that thing. That's what the top 1% of developers are doing. They get fulfillment from furthering their understanding or their mastership of this craft, and these people are usually very, very rare. That's why, I assume that's why we call them the top 1%. But you see them usually when you you can listen. Usually, if you talk to a software developer and you ask them about what they usually do or like what they think is cool and so forth and so forth, they will tell you that, oh yeah, I've been really into this thing here, so I've made a few side projects where I've experimented with this thing here. I've been building or hacking on this thing. They're usually experimenting or trying shit out, doing, as I've said before, guys, which is the way that you usually learn. Small personal projects. It doesn't have to be a big system type of thing. It just has to be something that you fiddle around with. They tinker with stuff in order to figure out how it works. This is usually how they get to be so good, because they take the time to not just learn how to ship code. They start picking apart a lot of the different things that they are using in order to ship that code and sort of really examine, all right, all of these things I'm doing, why am I doing those things? Is there other ways of doing it? And what ways are there? And is one way better than the other? And they start comparing, they try things out. Okay, so if you do functional, this is how you do it. If you do object-oriented, that's how you do it. Or you use that tool, that's how that works. And if you use that tool, that's how it works. And then you start to see a pattern in that, well, yeah, these different approaches you can use, but this one here seems to be a little bit more appropriate. You see what I'm trying to go for? They're playing around with different solutions to their problems and starting to acquire quite a lot of experience with the different approaching to solving problems. That's usually how they get so good at what they're doing. So what I want you to take away from this is that the top 1% of software engineers have, in my opinion, at least everyone I've ever talked to, they have the same thing in common. They have a genuine interest and curiosity for the thing that they're doing, and this is true for everybody. I think that it doesn't matter if it's a software engineer or an athlete or a volunteer worker or so forth. They genuinely care about the thing that they are doing. That's number one. The thing the software developers usually do, and I'm assuming this is what scientists do as well, their curiosity turns into experimentation, and they sit and fiddle around and tinker with stuff until they figure out how things work. And they keep on doing that just over and over and over. They learn something and they start fiddling around with it and trying it out in small controlled experiments, and they play around with it, and they further deepen their understanding of all the things that make up how to build a good system. They acquire experience, basically. And that's really, in my opinion, all there is to it. And then you can of course argue for, like, inherent aptitude, and like you're born with certain predispositions, and some people are smarter than others and so forth. But this is at the very least the red thread that I see that is consistent across through all the software developers I've worked with, which I would call like the top notch. They all have that trait in common. Nobody ever got that good without trying out stuff and playing around with different solutions to a problem, because that is what is required for you to get a more in-depth understanding of all the intricacies and nuances to basically software engineering. It's the main difference, I would say. Mediocre software developers usually don't do this. They sort of treat most things like software development as just a job, or like they might find it interesting, but they don't really experiment or reflect or like do these sorts of things. But the top 1% are usually the people who are doing these sorts of things. Have a great day.